Hello and welcome to this week's episode. As you can see, I'm in an appropriate location for the subject. Now, during this episode, there are going to be lots of references of right and left, and I know that there are people who have difficulty distinguishing between right and left, and so here is a useful tip for you. If you hold out your hands like that, your right hand is the one with the thumb on the left. Hope that helps. If you enjoy this episode, please click the like and subscribe buttons and please share it with anybody really. Okay, let's get started.
I have often been asked why it is that people drive on the left in Britain. I find this question odd for a variety of reasons. First of all, a lot of people imagine that only Britain drives on the left. Even in Europe, there are other countries which do so. If you look at the whole world, you'll find that there are 68 countries that drive on the left. Some of these countries are very small, like Malta or Kiribati. Others are pretty big, like India, Japan, Indonesia, and Australia. It's estimated that about 30% of the world's cars are driven on the left. Why is this? Interestingly, the answer to this question originates in ancient cities the world over. Take Rome as an example. Archaeological evidence shows that Romans used to ride their horses, carts, chariots, and so on the left.
I drive regularly both on the left and on the right, and I don't really think it's a big issue. So, for example, here I am in the car on the right, on with the right hand steering wheel, and here I am with the car on the left. Doesn't really make any difference. Certainly, driving in the UK and in Italy does have a lot of contrast, but it's nothing to do with whether you're on the left or the right.
When looking at the history, it's probably better to talk about travelling on the left rather than driving, because travelling for most people meant walking, only the well off road. As I said, when people travelled, the vast majority of civilizations throughout human history had conventions, rules, laws, whatever, that people should keep to the left, at least in cities. Outside the cities, the rules weren't so strict. Passenger coaches in the 1700s in most of Europe used trumpets to signal to oncoming traffic which side of the road they wanted to pass on. The roads were so bad that the drivers of fast moving coaches chose the side of the road which had fewer potholes. Sound familiar? In cities, the rule was extremely important to avoid gridlock. Cities in most ancient civilizations observed these rules, the Roman Empire included, so travelling on the left hand side of the road was the norm. So why travel on the left? One theory is that travelling was dangerous and that most people were right handed, so they were able to draw a sword, or more likely a knife, to deal with any hostile person coming the other way. There might be some truth in that, but I think other factors are far more important. A while ago, I made a video on why people board planes from the left hand side, and I'll put a link to this in the description below to that video. In that video, I pointed out that people habitually mount horses from the horse's left. If your horse is parked, if parked is the right word for a horse, if your horse is parked on the left hand side of the road, it's safer to mount. If the rule had been to travel on the right hand side of the road, the driver would have been forced to mount the horse in the middle of the road. In 1300 AD, Pope Boniface VIII issued an edict which he declared that all pilgrims travelling to Rome for the first Jubilee should keep to the left, as was the norm. As was the norm is key here. It implies that he was just reiterating an already existing law and not making a new one. So why did the world change? Before the French Revolution, aristocrats travelled on the left-hand side of the road, forcing their social inferiors over to the right. Afterwards, they thought it safer to keep a low profile and joined the peasants on the right. This then became common practice in revolutionary France, although driving on the right didn't fully become law in France until the 1920s. When Napoleon started his invasions of his neighbours, his government not only stole just about everything that wasn't nailed down, it also imposed Napoleonic law on occupied territories, the metric system, and travelling on the right. By the way, don't have any illusions about Napoleon. He was no different from Hitler, Stalin, or Mao Zedong. In the 19th century, the colonies of France and most of the countries that had been imposed by Napoleon forced their territories in the colonized countries to drive on the right, while the countries colonized by Britain were forced to travel on the left. Japan and Thailand, ex-Siam, were never colonized, and so they continued to follow the ancient left-hand side rule. What about the USA and Canada? In the early years of colonization in North America, English driving customs were followed and people kept to the left. However, after gaining independence from the United Kingdom in 1776, former colonists were determined to cast off all links with the old country, with Pennsylvania in the lead adopting the right-hand side rule in 1792. But there was another big factor. Grain wagons were massive in the New World and needed to be pulled by large teams of horses. The driver sat on the left rear horse so that he could keep his right arm free to use the whip on the other horses. Since he was perched on the left, he wanted oncoming wagons to pass on the same side so that he could look down and make sure that he stayed clear of the other wagon's wheels. That meant keeping the wagon to the right-hand side of the road. As Canada had such a long border with the USA, it made sense to apply the same rules. Given modern traffic density and conditions, very few countries would contemplate changing the side of the road they travel on now because of the massive cost involved of such a change. So, as I said, approximately 30% of road users in the world travel on the left, and they are extremely likely to change.
There are people who claim that driving on the left is actually safer. The argument goes something like this. Most humans are right-handed, and this means that the right hand and the right arm are stronger and is also faster in reaction time. This means that when you keep your right hand on the steering wheel here, you can deal with any sudden changes in the situation very quickly. Also, right-handed people are generally right-eyed, and the right eye is closer to the centre of the road. And so, in a situation like traffic, motorways, etc., where a decision made in a fraction of a second is crucial, this could be important. Also, people who are right-handed are generally right-footed as well. So, in other words, your right foot controls the accelerator and the brake. Again, the things that need a faster reaction time than the clutch, which is only used for changing gear. And of course, if it's an automatic car, you don't even have that third pedal. They also point out that even cars designed to drive on the right have the same pedal arrangement as cars that drive on the left. It's not that, okay, you change over the steering arrangements, you steer with a different hand and you change gear with a different hand, but on either type of car, you use your right foot for the accelerator and the brake and the left foot for the clutch. Though this may support the argument.
I think it would be interesting for some serious research to be done on this subject. Over the last few decades, road accidents on average have killed about 1.3 million people per year, compared to wars, which is 85,000 people per year. Which gets most publicity?
I don't think any serious research will ever be done. There are too many vested interests in maintaining the status quo. In the past, countries have changed the side of the road they drive on, but these countries have either been countries with a very low traffic density, or it's happened a long time ago. And so I don't think there'll be any change. All we can do is drive carefully. Don't forget, these things are dangerous, not just for you, but for everyone around you. Okay, see you next time.